So we already talked about you want to build a relationship, right? Relationships take time, right?
Yeah.
To develop.
Yeah.
And so think of this conversation you're having with a potential investor where you don't have an assumption page and you just showing them financials and they question something. And, again, maybe this is a set of financials you developed a year or 2 years ago, and you don't know the answer to the question. Okay, well, hey, I got to get back to you on that. Well, that's going to
Hmm.
be a shorter meeting, right? You're going to get back to them. Hopefully you're going to overcome whatever. But if you walk in with an assumption page and you have a discussion about assumptions, and
Excuse
then
me.
they have a question about a particular number and they're walking with you through the assumptions, that's a longer meeting, helping
Yeah.
you develop a relationship, you
Yeah.
know, and they are buying into the process
Yeah.
and thus buying into your company, buying into your vision, right? The more time you're spending with them, the more engaged they get with you discussing this idea, the higher the probability every minute you're spending with them increases the probability that you're going to get investment from them.
Well, it's twofold. Yes, they get to see your thought process, but you also get to see theirs.
Yeah.
And that's what starts to help you figure out. Like for me, again, I will always kind of equate it back to the corporate side because I spent more time there.
Yeah.
But I remember going into interviews, and as much as they were interviewing me, I was interviewing them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my interview started the moment I got off the elevator.
Yeah.
So if I walk into an office and I'm looking at a bunch of people that look like they don't like each other, that tells me plenty of things.
Yeah.
And I've been at many a place where I looked and I'm like, everybody's got their head down. Nobody looks like they care about anything that's going on with people. How long was I standing there before someone said, I'm sorry, do you need help?
Yeah.
Like all of those things made me go, okay, so you people don't really like each other. So I'd be
Right.
walking into a situation where the office politics or something that are. So when I say on this side, when you go through that thought process and you go through that exercise of stress testing something
Yeah.
and they're asking you questions, you get to see their thought process. You get to see how their mind works. If you're paying attention, and I'm someone big on pattern recognition, you're going to see signs of something.
Yeah.
And once you see that sign, if you see it again, then that lets you know that it's a pattern. It doesn't always have to be with that same person, but if you start seeing people ask you the same questions or different variations of that question, then that means there's something that's still going unaddressed or that you're
Right.
not articulating in the way that you want to be able to articulate.
Right.
But then you can also tell when you start to get those red flag questions and you're like, okay, now you're telling me what your agenda is
Yeah.
based on the question that you asked me. So it's not just something where that person's learning about you, you get to learn about that person. So pay attention when you're having these conversations and document these things because when you document these things, you can go back. And I mean, this is part of where AI and all the rest of that stuff starts to kick in.
Yeah.
AI can give you this is what a perfect scenario looks like. Where
Right.
you get the context, where it can actually start giving you better advice, is
Hmm.
documenting some of the things that you see along the way. So if you have a conversation, you realize someone said something and it didn't sit well with you,
Yeah.
and you're able to go back in AI and say, yeah, I've had like 3 people ask me this question. It didn't sit well with me, but I didn't know why. Yeah, may actually be able to go in and say, yeah, I mean, you didn't know how to name it, but let me
Yeah.
put a name to it. This is
Yeah.
why this didn't sit well with you. This is what this leads to. And this is why that may not be the best deal for you. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different things within that.
And
Okay, so
also,
we've covered the different options. I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and also if you approach this from the perspective of every no get you closer to yes, because every no is a learning experience, an opportunity to learn
Mhm.
something, right? So when you have this discussion with an investor about assumptions, even if the deal ultimately doesn't work out with that investor, if you've had this back and forth dialogue about assumptions, what they've done is they've strengthened your financials, right?
Exactly.
Because they've pointed out things. Every investor is going to see some weakness in what you show them, but and every time you're talking to someone, if you're addressing that weakness, it's one less weakness for the next investor to find. So
Yeah.
eventually, you're going to get to a point where, and I may have mentioned this in the last session. I always tell people because I like bringing other entrepreneurs into play. I talk about Kathy Hughes with
Mm.
Radio One and
Mhm.
her getting rejected for a loan, like I think it was 35 times before she finally got her first loan to buy a radio station. And again, it was, you know, my guess is, I don't know the woman, but I'm guessing that each one of those no's was a learning experience so that her loan application got refined each time. And so
Yeah.
now by the 36th bank, this thing is so pristine, they couldn't say no, right?
Yes.
Every issue had been addressed, right? It had been raised by the other 35 bankers, and she had addressed those And each time she's coming back with a stronger package. Well, by 36 a pitch, you've got a bulletproof pitch, right? Because
Yeah.
you've addressed all the issues that everyone else has brought up. So, yeah,
Thank you for circling back to that because I also want to double down on that. Don't just hear someone say, "Well, I heard 36, 35 no's, and by the time I got to the 36, I was able to get that yes."
yeah,
They were making that those are iterations. They were making improvements. They weren't just taking all the no's and just
yeah,
finally found the 36th person that said yes.
yeah,
They were taking information and learning from it and refining it to the point where they were able to get where they wanted to be able to go.
right.
I think so much of entrepreneurship is that.
Yeah,
Like, that's those are those learning moments. It's why I say there's a difference between people that are book learned and then the people that have life experience, because
right.
book learned, AI learned is gonna tell you the perfect scenario, but it takes living through those moments to be able to go, "Yeah, I mean, I know what it told me, I know what the book told me, I know what AI told me." And
Right.
then when I went in and I tried to present it that way, it was like, "Okay, well, what about this? And what
Yeah,
about this? And what
yeah,
about this?" And that's where you get the context where life actually steps in and it intercedes and it forces you to be able to have the context
yeah.
that will allow you to be able to get further and further into those conversations.